In the Wild West, some names are a death sentence. These bounty hunters thought they cornered a defenseless kid for an easy payday. They were wrong. Because they just invited the world's deadliest gunslinger to a massacre. The story begins and we see a boy named Lucas. He's only 13 years old. And he's already living a life that would break most grown men. When his parents passed away, Lucas didn't get time to grieve. He just got to work. Every single day, raising cattle, cooking meals, cleaning the house, keeping everything together. Not because someone told him to, but because his little brother was counting on him. And Lucas wasn't going to let him down. He never showed his brother how much he was hurting inside. He smiled, he taught him, he fed him, and then cried alone when no one was watching. Because deep down, Lucas was still just a kid. Scared, tired, and quietly hoping that someday, someone would show up and make things a little easier. Winter was coming. Food was running low. Lucas had been raising a pig for months and it was finally time to sell it. He rode into town, hoping for a fair deal. The moment the shopkeeper saw a small boy standing alone, he saw an easy target. He paid Lucas less than half of what that pig was worth. Lucas knew he was being cheated. But he had no choice. He took the money and headed to the grocery store. At least the grocery shopkeeper was kind. He gave Lucas a discount, charged him fairly, and when he found out Lucas had a little brother at home, he handed him a piece of candy. A small gesture, but it meant everything. On the way back, Lucas heard his brother crying. He grabbed a stick and ran toward the sound. Two boys were trying to snatch that candy right out of his brother's hands. Lucas didn't think twice. He swung that stick and sent both of them running. But the next morning, trouble came riding straight to his front door. Two men on horseback. One of them the boy Lucas had hit, and the other his father. The father looked Lucas dead in the eyes. "Pay for my son's broken hand, or I go to the sheriff and you go to jail." He'd be back tomorrow for an answer. Then he turned his horse and rode off. Lucas stood there watching the dust settle. Jail didn't scare him. What scared him was the thought of leaving his little brother all alone in this world. That night, his brother asked the question Lucas had been dreading. "Where are we going to get the money?" Lucas told him not to worry. He'd figure it out. But the moment he stepped outside alone, he broke down completely. Because he already knew the truth. There was no money. There was no way out. Tomorrow, he was going to jail. And his little brother was going to be left behind. The next morning, Lucas stepped outside and spotted a wolf in the distance. He'd seen this wolf lurking around before. And with the thought of leaving his brother alone, one fear hit him harder than anything else. What if that wolf came back when no one was there to stop it? Lucas grabbed his rifle and took off. He chased that wolf through open land for nearly half an hour, breathing hard, legs burning, until the wolf finally stopped. He raised his rifle. He took the shot. The bullet missed the wolf. It hit a man. A complete stranger who had simply wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time. The man dropped to the ground, and he was gone. Lucas stood frozen. It was an accident. A terrible, heartbreaking accident. But that didn't matter once word got out. He was dragged into court. He stood before the judge and pleaded his case over and over. This was never intentional, it was a mistake, he would never hurt anyone on purpose. But the judge had already decided. He brought up the boy with the broken hand from the market, and painted Lucas as dangerous and violent. The verdict came down hard. Lucas would be put to death within 5 days. Because in this world, the punishment for taking a life, accident or not, was your own. Lucas felt everything collapse inside him. Not because he feared death, but because he knew, the moment that sentence was carried out, his little brother would have no one left in this entire world. He was thrown into a cell. Shortly after, a woman appeared, fighting with everything she had. She argued with the judge, pleaded with the jury, begged anyone who would listen. "Lucas is just a child. You cannot do this." But no one listened. Defeated and broken, she came to see Lucas. That's when he found out, she was his aunt. She had tried everything. But she couldn't change anyone's mind. Lucas didn't ask her to try again. He made one quiet request, "Take care of my brother. He has no one else." His aunt looked at him with tired, sad eyes. "She was too old," she said. She could barely look after herself. She had already done everything she could. And with that, she walked away. Lucas's last hope had just left the building. Then deep in the middle of the night, a shadow moved through the prison. Silent, calm, dangerous. This man moved through that prison like a ghost, and anyone who got in his way didn't get a second chance. One by one, he cleared his path until he reached Lucas's cell. Lucas pressed himself against the wall, terrified. This man had taken out everyone in his path. Was he here to finish the job on him too? But the man simply said, "Come with me." Lucas refused. He didn't ask to be broken out. He wasn't trying to escape. The man didn't argue. He knocked Lucas out cold, threw him over a horse, and rode through the dark until they were far from that prison. When Lucas opened his eyes in the morning light, panic set in immediately. "Who are you? Why did you take me? I never wanted to run." The man said nothing. He just placed a bag of water in front of him. Lucas was exhausted and thirsty. He drank. Then he looked up and said the only thing on his mind, "My little brother is alone at home. I'm going back to him." The man finally spoke. "You can't go anywhere. You're a fugitive now. Your life will never be what it was before. You can't just walk back home and pretend none of this happened." Lucas fired back, "I never wanted this life. I never asked to escape." The man looked at him quietly and said, "At least you still have a life." That landed. Lucas took a breath. If he stayed alive, maybe one day he could find his brother again. He calmed down and followed the man. But he kept asking the same question over and over, "Who are you and why are you helping me?" The man never answered. After a while, Lucas spotted the man's gun resting near the horse. He moved quickly, grabbed it, pointed it straight at the man and demanded answers. The man turned around slowly. His name was Harland. And then he said something that stopped Lucas cold. "I'm your grandfather." Lucas shook his head. "That's impossible." His mother always told him his grandfather had died years ago. This couldn't be real. Harland reached out calmly, and snatched the gun right back. Then he looked Lucas in the eye and said, "Don't ever point a gun at me again. I don't care if you're my grandson. I will not hesitate." Lucas went quiet. The next morning, while Harland slept, Lucas made a run for it. He ran hard and long until he reached a river. That's when Harland appeared behind him, calm as ever. He looked out at the endless land around them and said, "Look around you. Do you see anything? Anyone? There's nothing out here. You'll get lost. You'll starve. And if someone finds you first, they'll hang you on the spot. Everyone is looking for you. So if you want to stay alive, you follow me. This is your only choice." Lucas looked around. Harland was right. He had no other option. He fell in behind him. 4 days, the two of them wandered through the wilderness together. Then they crossed paths with 2 hunters, men who seemed decent enough. They had food, hot tea, and even offered them a place to sleep for the night. Lucas slipped away and spotted 2 horses tied up outside. He noticed a leather bag hanging off one of them and figured there might be something to eat inside. He reached in, found some cookies, and started eating. Then his hand touched something else. A piece of paper. He pulled it out. His blood ran cold. It was a wanted poster, with his face on it, and Harland's. $1,000 on their heads. Before Lucas could even process it, a man stepped out of the shadows and pressed a pistol against his head. He wanted that reward money. But before he could do anything, Harland appeared from behind with a knife pressed to the man's neck. "Drop the pistol." Gunshots exploded, and when the smoke cleared, both hunters were down. Lucas had never seen anything like it up close. He was shaking. He told Harland, "I don't want this life. I don't want to keep running while people die around me. I just want peace." Harland looked at him and said, "Peace isn't something you get to choose right now. This is the life in front of you, and you're going to have to walk through it." Lucas took a breath, and kept moving. They arrived at a small town. Lucas had written a letter for his little brother, and he was ready to send it. The moment Harland saw it, he grabbed his arm. "Are you serious? The second that letter arrives, every bounty hunter within 100 miles is going to come straight for you." He took the letter and walked off to get supplies. While Harland was gone, Lucas noticed a crowd gathering in the center of town. He walked over to see what was happening. And what he saw shook him to his core. A man was being hanged. Lucas stood there and stared. And for the first time, he saw himself in that man. That was going to be him. Hanging in front of a crowd. And there was nothing he could do about it. He was still shaking when Harland came back, this time with groceries and a dog he'd picked up along the way. Something shifted after that. Lucas stopped fighting Harland. He started talking to him. Really talking. He told him he wanted to learn. How do you survive out here? How do you stay alive when the whole world is hunting you? Harland noticed the change. For the first time, these two weren't just running together. They were a team. And for Harland, who had been completely alone for years, having Lucas beside him felt like finding something he thought he'd lost forever. That night, Harland finally opened up. He told Lucas everything. When he was young, he had a family, a home, a life he loved. Then the bank came for his land. He fought back. He lost. And the rage inside him boiled over until he did something he could never take back. He ended the bank manager's life and burned the whole building to the ground. Since that day, he'd been running. He changed his name. Let the world believe he was dead. And tried to live quietly, never wanting to hurt anyone again. Then one day, a letter arrived from Lucas's aunt. His grandson's life was in danger. He was going to be put to death. So, Harland picked up his gun one more time. Lucas listened to every word. He understood his grandfather's pain, because he had lived his own version of it. No parents. No support. Just a child trying to hold everything together alone. He knew exactly what it felt like to be helpless, with no one coming to save you. The next day, they came across a house in the middle of nowhere. They figured they'd rest there for a while. But as they approached, a woman stepped out with a gun raised. She had a small child with her, around the same age as Lucas's little brother. Lucas felt the ache instantly. He walked slowly toward the child, calm, gentle, and handed over the dog. The little kid's eyes lit up. Lucas smiled. Then turned and walked away with Harland. But the sickness was already catching up to him. By the time they made camp, his fever was burning high. Harland didn't leave his side. He took care of Lucas for days, quietly, patiently, until the fever finally broke. When Lucas got back on his feet and went to the river to fetch water, he came back to find strangers surrounding their shelter. Bounty hunters. Shouting Harland's name. Harland opened fire from inside. Lucas had no idea what to do. Then Harland burst out, took a bullet, grabbed Lucas and ran. They pushed hard until the hunters finally fell back. But Harland was in bad shape. He hid it as best he could, didn't want Lucas to panic. He told him it was just a small wound. But everything they had, food, medicine, supplies, was left behind. And Harland's condition was getting worse by the hour. The next morning while Harland slept, Lucas grabbed the gun and went hunting. He was going to find a rabbit. Get Harland something to eat. But before he could find anything, Native American riders appeared from all sides, circling him on horseback. Lucas tried to explain. He was just a kid, just out here looking for food. They didn't understand a word. Harland was already on his feet in the distance, gun raised, ready to take every single one of them down if they touched his grandson. But Lucas had a better idea. He slowly dropped to one knee, placed his gun on the ground, and pushed it forward. Then he pointed, gun for horse. One of the riders picked up the weapon, examined it carefully, and recognized its value. He nodded, handed over a horse, and rode away. Harland stood there watching, and for the first time, he smiled. His grandson was going to be just fine. They rode into the nearest town. Lucas sent Harland ahead to a shelter while he went to find medicine. But people in that shelter had already recognized Harland. The local sheriff walked in, cool and authoritative, and told Harland he was coming with him. Then bounty hunters pushed through the door. That reward is ours, they said. We were here first. The sheriff didn't blink. The law is above all of you. Above them. Above me. Above everyone. Bullets started flying. The sheriff and the bounty hunters went at each other, and in the chaos, Harland slipped out and called for Lucas. They ran. But Harland's body was giving out. He knew he couldn't make it much further. He made a decision. He stopped. Told Lucas to keep going straight. Mexico was 50 kilometers away. His aunt had already taken his little brother there. No one would come after him across that border. He'd be free. He'd have his brother back. He'd have a real life. Lucas refused to move. "I'm not leaving you." Then a bounty hunter appeared, gun aimed straight at Lucas. "Drop it," he told Harland, "or the boy dies." Harland dropped his weapon without hesitation. But before the bounty hunter could collect, the sheriff arrived. He fired. Told the bounty hunter to stand down. But Harland already knew, this man wouldn't stop. He grabbed the bounty hunter's weapon and put him down. The bounty hunter fired one last shot on his way to the ground, and the sheriff fell. Harland walked over to the sheriff slowly, hands visible, and said, "I surrender. But I have one condition. My grandson walks free. He goes to Mexico. You don't touch him. I'll come with you peacefully." The sheriff, bleeding on the ground, agreed. Lucas broke down. He told Harland he wasn't going anywhere without him. Harland looked at his grandson, this boy who had grown up right in front of his eyes, and said the words that broke everything open. "Your whole life is still ahead of you. Go live it. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good grandfather. But let me do this one thing right. Let my last act be for my family." Lucas held onto him. And then, he let go. Harland walked into town with the sheriff. And despite everything, despite his age, despite his wounds, he was brought to the gallows. And he was gone. Lucas crossed into Mexico. His aunt was waiting. And standing right beside her, his little brother. The two of them held each other. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Lucas wasn't alone anymore. He always believed he had no one in this world. But a grandfather he never knew came back from the dead, gave up everything, just to make sure his grandson had a chance to live. That's not just a story about survival. That's a story about what family really means. If this recap moved you, smash that like button, subscribe to Cinemaned, and drop a comment below. Would you have left, or stayed with your grandfather till the end? See you in the next one.